Hello, welcome to Geeking Out with Shad. This video is going to be about towing range and more particular EV towing range, but I'm not really going to talk about EV towing range. What I'm going to talk about is towing range in a gas-powered pickup truck. Because there's all this criticism of EVs and towing and how terrible they are, and the reality is they're actually little to no different than your experience towing with a gas-powered truck, and I'll explain that here in a second. But right now everybody's all hating on these new EV pickup trucks because they get less than half the range than when they're not towing and things like that, and it's like, well, yeah. Guess what? When I tow with this guy, I get less than half the range with it. Yes, I do. I get less than half the miles per gallon, and that equates to less than half the range. And in more particular, it's when I'm towing this guy, right? So the towing capacity of my truck is 6,800 pounds. Toyota Tacoma V6, so on and so forth. It's just under 300 horsepower. So yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be a monster towing truck, but my trailer weighs 3,000 pounds, and it's got a rounded front and stuff, so you know, a little bit of wind braking there, so on and so forth, right? It's not a square front pushing against the wind, although it does create wind resistance, obviously. So here's the stats that I get when I'm towing with this, and my comparison is going to be my trip to Hayward, Wisconsin from here, because it's all the similar roads, and I've done this trip with a trailer and without a trailer, with my Tacoma in similar weather, not high winds, stuff like that. So the Tacoma has a 21.1 mile per gallon tank. 21.1 gallon tank. Mile per gallon. Crack me up. That's because it says mile per gallon on the next line. When I was towing with my trailer, same route to Hayward, Wisconsin, I got 11 miles per gallon. That is a range of about 230 miles, and I remember that trip. I like to fill up my tank when it's getting below a quarter of a tank, and I remember I drove from here to there, which is 150 something miles. I'll look that up and put it down below here. But when I got there, I was getting lower on gas, so I wanted to go and immediately fill up on gas, especially with how quickly my tank was dropping, because it's like, well, I don't want to risk running out of gas and being at a length of road where there's no gas stations, which could happen out in the middle of Wisconsin. That same trip, without the trailer on the back, I was getting 24 miles per gallon, and the reason why I was getting such a high number is because the roads getting from here to there are 55 mile per hour, some 60. There's very few stretches that are high speed 65, 75, 70, 75 mile per hour roads. They're all 2-lane, you know, county roads and things like that. So 24 miles per gallon, which is pretty impressive, because normally, like when I'm driving on bigger highways and going over 70, I get about 19 to 20 miles per gallon with my truck. So 24 miles per gallon is a range of 485 miles. So way more than double. If you times 230 by 2, that's 260 miles. So that's more than double the amount of range not towing versus towing this trailer. Which is half the capacity of my truck's towing ability. Honestly, I think if I towed a 6,800 pound trailer with this truck, it would be pretty maxed out, like, because it is only just under 300 horsepower. It's doable, but it just wouldn't be very fun. But with this trailer, I still have to work the engine quite a bit. I mean, I'm still revving and having to downshift to get in that sweet spot, all that stuff, because it's a lot of work. It's kind of rolling hills, things like that, right? So coming back to EVs, when people talk about EVs getting less than half the range and how poor they tow, like if you have an EV, Ford F-150 Lightning or something, and it has like 300 or just over 300 miles of range without towing, and you get 125 to 150 miles when towing, that is pretty much what you'd expect. so this whole thing where people just hate on EVs is kind of funny. But let's talk about this, because there are issues, and they're not the ones that everybody is saying they are. So then, if EVs tow just as much as well, I should say, as a gas-powered truck, then what is the problem? Well, the problem is they take longer to charge or refuel, if you want to think of it that way. So if you're towing with a gas-powered vehicle, you can stop and fuel up your tanks in 5-10 minutes and get back out on the road. With an EV, you can't do that yet, right? It's coming, but it's just not there yet. The other issue is there just aren't as many EV chargers. Like, I personally wouldn't mind stopping more often, charging, taking more breaks, because I don't really care. I'm not like trying to get somewhere really fast. Like, I kind of like the casual route. Not everybody's like that. People love to get somewhere really fast. I see them all the time. They'll have their huge trucks with massive trailers, and they're doing 75, 80 miles per hour. And I'm just like, that has got to be super wasteful at that speed with those big trucks. They probably are getting worse. They're probably getting like 6 to 8 miles per gallon or something doing that. So that is the deal. The deal is more of the charging infrastructure and the amount of time it takes to recharge. It's not that EVs are bad at towing. So right now, I think as far as pickup trucks go, EVs, they would be great for in a metropolitan area. If you own a construction company and you tow and things like that, and you're staying within a certain distance and going to construction sites, you'd save a heck of a lot of money going to an EV. And EVs tow nicer. They have way more torque, they accelerate better, they pull this equipment around way easier than a gas powered truck. So that would be like what I would think, a lawn care company, construction company, something like that. But for people who tow RVs, or people that got to tow, you know, construction equipment, you know, I'm thinking of skid loaders, you know, things like that, long distances, yeah, an EV probably wouldn't be the best option yet, right? Again, it's coming, but it just, right now, it isn't the best option for somebody like that. But for local, you know, in a city construction company, or for somebody who doesn't tow a lot and they mostly just haul stuff from the bed, which is kind of what I do. I don't really tow that much. Once in a great while I'll tow this thing, but most of the reason why I own a truck is I put bikes in the bed, I put other stuff in the bed. I like to, you know, build ramps and stuff for jumping my bikes and things, and I put the wood back there or whatever, right? Like hauled my lawnmower, my snowblower, or whatever, right? But for the most part, I don't tow that often. Once in a while I do. And for somebody like me, I actually probably could do fairly well with an EV pickup truck, which I will gladly replace this with a good EV pickup truck when something reasonable is available. Right now, trying to get an EV pickup truck is a long waiting list. So that's why I have my Tacoma and an EV, is because I can't fully go to EV until I have a vehicle that's capable enough. And I understand that for other people too, but that doesn't mean you just all out criticize EVs and say they're not a viable option, because they absolutely are for a lot of people, and probably the majority of people, because out of all the people that are out there transporting themselves from point A to point B, they don't need the capabilities of this small percentage of people that do a lot of towing, or they do this long range driving and stuff like that. So there you have it. So another myth bust is EVs are not terrible for towing. They're almost identical results as far as range goes. How are we going to solve this problem? Well, bigger batteries could be one reason, but if you do, like when GM comes out with a Hummer and you make this massive, almost 10,000 pound truck with these massive wheels and everything, and then put a 200 kilowatt hour battery in it, the truck barely gets over 300 miles of range, and it's got a battery twice the size, or almost twice the size, of a Ford F-150, which also gets F-150 Lightning I'm talking about, which also gets like around 300 miles. So yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go and just make this obscene heavy truck and massive, you know, I own the road type of thing, it's not gonna be feasible. But if you put a 200 kilowatt hour or more battery in a normal size pickup truck, now you're going to be able to tow much longer distances and so on and so forth. And that's what they do with these other trucks that have gas in them. Is that is 21.1 gallon tank, but on these bigger trucks that you see towing, they've got much bigger gas tanks, and that's how they solve the problem, so they can get more ranges. They just have massive gas tanks in them. So then when they fill gas in them, it costs them easily over $100 these days or more to fill the tank of gas in their pickup truck. That costs me between $60 and $70 depending on what the gas prices are doing right now. So it's expensive. It's really expensive to drive a vehicle that gets lower MPGs. So there you go. I appreciate your support for my channel. Please like and subscribe. Peace. Oh yeah, I expect comments on this one. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.